Welcome to Bootstrappers, a program designed to bring you up-to-the-minute ideas and concepts to understand what it takes to succeed in business and life. Each week, we'll bring you guests and ideas you can't find anywhere else. Bootstrappers is a production of Anaquim, LLC. Now let's lace up those business boots and join Bootstrappers with Jeremy and Gwen Aspen.
Welcome to this episode of Bootstrappers. I'm your host, Gwen Aspen, president of Anaquim, and I'm here with my lovely spouse.
That's me.
Jeremy Aspen, president of Wistar Group. And here at Bootstrappers, we talk to stakeholders in entrepreneurship and business. Today's going to be kind of a fun show because we get to go down memory lane and remember our first years in property management and how we got all of our clients.
Oh, yeah, the good years of business, the beginning. Oh, that's the fun part.
But later in the show, we have the expert, Jeremy Pound from Rent Scale, who's going to talk to us about how he helps his clients grow their top line revenue way faster than they could alone. So we're going to give you like the old school version of how we did it, the Bootstrappers way.
The Bootstrapper.
And then Jeremy's going to come and give us the expert education.
The other Jeremy. The lesser. We could probably, let's just, the lesser?
No, just don't even.
Right,
okay.
Right.
So let's get to it, Jeremy. I want you to take us down back to 2006.
Six-ish? Okay, yeah. So,
and tell us about what exactly transpired. How did you get your first properties? Because those are always the hardest to get.
Well, so first of all, I had moved back from overseas, and when you live overseas, you don't have a lot to do with your money. So a lot of people just put the money back into the United States, where they're originally from, and you build kind of a real estate portfolio. I had, over the course of my years in another country, I think I'd bought 18 units. And then my best friend, Luis, he had 64 of his own units. And so, coming back to Omaha, there weren't a lot of prospects for international supply chain management. So
There weren't.
Yeah, as it turns out. I mean, you can move grain like corn and nothing against it. I think it's a great industry, but it just didn't match my expertise. So we got together and decided that we were going to put together a management company because that made a lot of sense. We were going to create our own business. And then
you kind of defined your own niche at the time, too. I remember you said we're going to be, because we were looking at property managers before we moved here.
Yeah.
And nobody was very tech savvy at the time. So your niche was you were going to be the most tech savvy property management company.
So actually, I'll remind you that one of the things, it was what you said. You said we need to go into an industry, a shady industry, and not be shady.
Which I would say over the course of the last
with our experience,
15 years or so, it's not shady at all.
But here in Omaha, we had a hard time because we looked for property management companies at the time, and none of them rose to the caliber of quality that we wanted to have for our properties because it was a big part of our retirement plan. So we started out with a simple list. We got it from the county. And it was we got properties, single-family homes and multiplexes of properties where the mailing address was not the same
as the address
of the property
building
itself. And so we sent out, I think, 113 flyers. Just as a sample, like we just wanted to get an idea of what percent we might be able to count on. And so we got 13 responses, and we got 12 closed. And one of them was the day it landed. I remember his name was Ken. He walked right into the office. He says, "I got your flyer. Let's get this thing going."
Really?
Yeah, that day. So we were like, whoa, okay, great. And so we got a contract, signed it up. And he had left this other, I don't want to mention any names, but there was another property management company in town. And she was kind of a nasty
person.
It wasn't going well with him. So it turned out that of the 12 that we got, I think 10 or 11 of them actually came from that company. So it was a little fortuitous. Tell
us why that was problematic.
Well, because the laws here in Nebraska protect brokers from approaching another broker's client. but it
she
has to be.
accused you.
And I had been accused of it. Yeah. So I can tell you that story too. So we went down to I went to go pick up some. This was another client that we got on board, and it was something like 56 units. It was kind of a big deal. So we went down there, picked up the keys, and she invites. I never met her before. Invites me into her office and starts just reading me the riot act. Like, you're doing this, it's illegal, you can't approach my clients. And I tried to explain to her, I didn't approach your clients, I didn't target. That would be illegal to target. I sent out a flyer, and here's the criteria. And then she just kept talking, and I opened the door back up because she was kind of getting nuts. And I just talked to her from out in the hallway and just told her, I'll see you later. I file a complaint. I got the keys. We'll see you 10 more times in the next month.
Oh my gosh.
It turned out. So anyway, after that, I ended up going and calling all of my competitors and taking them out to lunch. Just because, if we're going to be in this business together,
and
get along.
That also kind of worked out for us because we would take any piece of garbage that had a roof on it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And that's part of the thing.
Like, we were just starting out. And so some of our competitors were maybe a little bit more established, and they were like, well, do you want this? Because I don't want to manage it. And we were like, absolutely.
We'll take it. That sounds like a great property. You could drive by. You're like, yeah, wow.
Oh my God.
We're going to turn this one around. But another good source was the here in Omaha, the Metro Omaha Property Owners Association, and they're more of an activist group, kind of politically engaged. But it's a group of investors that all own residential property, and they kind of manage it themselves. And so we became a little bit of a feeder, being involved in the organization, and then we became kind of a feeder for people that were looking to get out and do their own thing.
And I'm sure there are those organizations in every metropolitan area, wouldn't you think?
There's got to be. And if there's not, start one up because
it was helpful.
It's kind of like a local version of NARPM, I would guess, where this organization gets involved in local issues like
laws
mayoral
and things
recalls,
like that.
law, statute at state level, but also code here in the city. And then, so anyway, after all that, we probably got I think we got ourselves up to about 200 and some units just that first go around.
What time frame?
Maybe 300. Oh, call it immediately.
Okay.
We kind of grew very quickly.
So then you had to work on your processes and procedures, I imagine.
Yeah, although I'd always kind of been developing them to some extent, and because I'm inherently lazy, like I'm the hardest working lazy person that I've met. I don't want to do things twice, so I set it up so that I don't. And then actually after a while we formalize things, and then you get a reputation.
So that was good for a while, and then it was not so good for a while.
Well, so actually that got us up to probably, after a while, not too long, we were up to 400 and some units, and then you have to restructure again. But, after a while, now we're jumping.
So let's tell that story, why we had to restructure. So we got to a certain level, and we kind of hit a wall with growth, I would say. And we talked to people, and we're like, we would do our sales pitch. They felt good about our processes and procedures. They felt good about our knowledge about the industry.
And we had been hiring good people.
We'd been hiring good people, but they would say,
There's a lot of work.
Your sign, I don't think I can get the kind of rent that I need because of your brand is known as being low entry because we took anything.
Yeah, when you start up your B and C, it's pretty rare to be able to get an A-class property at that point. And so at a certain point, and that point for us was at about 150 units, you start getting into some operational issues. You have to restructure. And you get to about 450 units, and you have to restructure again. And we did. We went through all those. And then at another point later on, we ended up having to rebrand the company. So the name of the company before was CPM Realty, Certified Property Management. And then we went to Wistar Group, and kind of the objective was to be able to, when we brought on a new good client that we kind of were more targeting, we would let go of one of the other units, one of the C-class units for starters. And so then
our unit count didn't really increase. We were increasing in quality. The
unit count stays the same, but the revenue triples for each unit because you're going from the $500 a month in rent to about $1,200 to $1,500 a month in rent. And also the labor per unit goes down because they're just easier to manage.
Oh, for sure.
So for years, we actually were transitioning. This is jumping ahead to about 1,200 units. We had 1,200 units, and we were working really hard. And then we transitioned over the course of 2 or 3 years, all the C-class properties out, some of the B-class properties out. Our revenue actually as a company skyrocketed, and the cost per unit went down. So it was an important part of the strategy.
It was an important thing, and it allowed us to get a nicer space, which could make clients feel like, oh, this is a higher end group, and the brand had a better cachet to it.
For sure.
The other thing that was fun about rebranding and going in that direction was we had the list of properties we were going to get rid of if we got new business on, and we would kind of celebrate with our maintenance team because they're the ones who felt the pain the most.
Oh man, did they ever?
And so when we would cross a bad property off the list, we'd be like, woo! We got this nice one here, but now we get to cross this, and it kind of kept the camaraderie going and the excitement about the business. That was fun.
It kept our unit count pretty stable for years. Actually, even to this point, we've been doing it until recently, and now we're kind of all in the A and B space, and it's made a huge difference.
I would say the next part that is scary is when we committed to really not having any properties that were low end. We changed some of our practices, and it was a little scary because we had some huge buildings that were low class. And when we said, well, we're going to close our office and be appointment only, we want people to have online applications, so you're going to have to pay to use a paper application. And our practices were changing so that we could put more money to that higher end client, and we knew by doing that we would be smoking out the low end clients.
It's kind of hard. Well, you said it's hard to do, but about the time when you start getting a reputation for being a high quality outfit, you also start to get a lot of calls for the lower end stuff. So to your point, saying no to 100 unit deals is very difficult.
Oh, especially coming from where we came from, where for so many years it was just like, the grind, we got to make it, we got to take it, we have to do whatever we can. To have that new mindset that we should be picky was a transition for some of the ownership team.
Although there was also one caveat. We would take the business if they agreed to a transition to it becoming from C to B.
And then we got known for doing that. Mm-hmm. When people wanted to, when they would come in and they'd be like, I need to evict everybody in this building. We were known as the turnaround experts.
Yeah.
And that
only then to have all those sell the second you turn them around. That's another one. You're like, oh my God. You get something that cranked up from B to C to B or B to A. And lo and behold, it becomes far more valuable. And then if you don't do sales, which we didn't do sales, especially at the time, we're not at the table.
Why did we not do sales? I think that was an interesting thing.
Because, so I had told that story earlier about that other company. They used property management as a loss leader. And I don't think that that's odd. I don't think that's abnormal in the industry, and
it was normal locally speaking.
It was
too.
Very normal. It was actually we were the only ones, and might even be the only ones that don't offer sales, because what it did was it made it so that the prize was being at the table when a property turned over. So the revenue of those property management companies became the sales.
Because they had first right of refusal.
Because they had first right of refusal. And so you sell the property sells, you're at the table, you're getting the buyer's end, the seller's end, and there's good money in it. But what also happens is that if you have that stable kind of revenue, the transitional sales kind, then you can easily give up on the quality of property management.
To make the sale go sooner.
Well, and so one of the buildings that we took on, it had been through the sales cycle with that other property management company 7 times in 6 years. So the theory, and I think it probably holds true, is that if you do the sales and you're not focusing on making the property management company better, then that's what's going to happen. And long term, it's just not a very good play, I don't think. And if at nothing else, it helps you hone your skills as a professional property management company and be the best option in the market.
And when we were at the table as newbies without much of a reputation, only doing property management and explaining why that was better.
That did help.
Really helped us close a lot of deals that we wouldn't otherwise do. Now, I would say one of the next things that's important about this is that after that happened, we went through a phase where we solely focused on profitability. And so that's what we're kind of leaving right now. Now we're in a place, and it's great to talk to Jeremy Pound at Rent Scale right now, because we're kind of at that place where we are lean, we're working smoothly, our processes and procedures are excellent, and now it's all about top line growth. So you're going to learn a lot personally from Jeremy Pound as well.
We've never at Wistar Group had a BDM, a business development manager, anybody that did sales of the property management services. And Jeremy Pound, that's the specialty. So, we've come up and we've done well, I think, because of our focus on quality over the years and word of mouth. But our spending per unit for marketing and sales it was close to zero.
Right.
It became organic, and there's something to that. But we've been at this unit count, call it 1,200 units, for years now, and there is, if I understand correctly, a way to really incorporate a BDM and have it more than pay for itself. So I am open to the idea of doing that, despite it having been nothing that we've done in the past.
And we're super happy to have Jeremy Pound here today. Jeremy is the CEO of Rent Scale, and Rent Scale, and correct me if I'm wrong, helps property management companies increase their top line revenue. Is that a good way to say it, Jeremy?
That's the way to do it. We do it by helping them systematize and operationalize their sales department and hopefully finally replace themselves as the only salesperson in the company.
And as a point of order, I think we should probably clarify there are two Jeremys, and we probably, just to make it obvious, will refer to me as Jeremy the Greater. This will be Jeremy the Lesser, if that's okay. Does that work?
Whatever.
Just easy to remember.
It is hard on the radio or audio with two Jeremys, so I can see this getting a little confusing.
But going back to sales, so, I mean, this is an authentic question for us because we're kind of in that position where we feel like our operations are awesome. Our branding is good. So what is it that we have to do next to really grow that top line growth and get in front of clients who own properties?
That's a great question. And, for 20 years, I've run a service-based sales organization. And I can tell you guys, for the first 10 or 12 years, I took a lot of pride in being the only salesperson in my company, right? It was the Jeremy show. And if I wasn't the one doing the sales, then what value was I really adding, right? That was maybe a limiting thought that I had. But I can tell you guys, this is my journey. The strength of the leader is very often the weakness of the company. Because I was so good at sales, I never thought anybody else had to do it because I did a little marketing, but I would always get bogged down and get sucked into other things, right? And so let's just share that experience that as soon as I got myself out of it, things started moving much faster. There's a great Jack Welch quote that I love. And Jack Welch says, "I've always been the best salesperson in any company I've ever run, but I can't sell as much as 10 salespeople. And so I want to build a department." And I think that even works when it comes down to one person. And let's just be honest, guys, we as business owners love to say, we want to go after this kind of client. We want to charge this amount. We want to have this margins. But we're the first ones to have the latitude and the authority to break that. Now, my sales team has to go up a chain of command to come to me to compromise on anything that we've set as a standard, versus me being in the height of the moment saying, "Oh, I can get this deal if I just give away a little bit of margin, or if I just break this policy, if I just do this." So for all those reasons, I have, come to the religion that the business owner should not be doing sales if they want the company to scale.
Well, and Jeremy, another thing that is interesting about what you just said is we had another guest on who was talking about selling their business. And you have to think, according to him, 7 years ahead of when you want to sell. And your company is going to sell for far less if the owner of the company who wants to get out of it is the face of the company and it is their show and they're the ones doing all the sales. Isn't that true?
Well, this is such a great point. This comes up a lot back in the day, as Jeremy and I were just joking about. when we were allowed to congregate in person, we would go to these things called conferences. We used to get these metal tubes.
I remember those days.
I know not everybody does. So, but if you're old enough to remember, we used to go to these conferences, and this would come up. People would come over to the booth and they would say, "Oh, I'm mostly growing by acquisition, and it's all about X dollars per property, and everything is factored in." And I said, that's fantastic. What are you trying to do with the business? Is it just a cash flow play? And very often people would say, well, I want to grow it. And then when I'm around, 500 doors, 1,000 doors, I'd love to sell this thing. And my question to them was always, okay, great. You are selling basically an asset to somebody else that will never be as valuable as it is the day you sell it. And they're going to catch on, because how did you grow these properties? If they don't know how to do that themselves, then they're going to give you a bunch of money, and then they have 500 properties, and maybe 6 months from then there will be attrition. It'll be 480, it'll be 460. Contrast that with this idea that you have a sales and marketing engine. So I have 500 properties, and by the way, I can show you for the last 7 months, we've been attracting 15 quality owners every month, right? So when you get in now, this business is going to be worth even more every single month that you own it. Those are very different value propositions, and that's why
absolutely
owning a quality sales team is a huge asset if you want to sell your business.
What was the name of that book that we read? It was about selling your company.
Oh, it was like, I think it's
Was
called
it Built to Sell?
Yes.
Built to Sell. Yeah. Great.
Morello. I'm a huge fan. Guys, side note, I had a marketing agency just like that book was about. And I was doing everything. And I read that book and I said, this is crazy. 18 months later, I sold my marketing agency. And that's when I started, my sales and marketing company. So I have a high regard for John.
That's awesome.
So just to go back a little bit for all the listeners and viewers, that book basically said that if you are the company, then it's almost impossible for you to sell your company for with any value assigned to it, because like Jeremy had just mentioned, when you sell the company and that person leaves, the company is essentially shutting down.
Yeah.
And you're going to be stuck, or I should say, you're going to be stuck inside that company with some sort of an agreement to be there for 3 or 5 years longer anyway, which isn't the same as selling and retiring.
Exactly.
It's really just kind of acting as the cushion for some transition that hasn't even really been all that well defined for the future.
Exactly. Okay.
Congratulations, you now have a boss. You do it that way.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
So if we extrapolate a little bit, so that book was about a marketing firm and how the owner of the company worked really hard, was doing a lot of the sales. He got a new team on board and they kind of designed their own product. That product then became what was sold. The machinery is what supported it. And the owner really worked on important relationships and more like the CEOing of it, right? So we're in property management, and what other industries our listeners and viewers are in. We are in a position, well, I should ask the question, I guess. How is our industry similar to that, and how does the sales part kind of fit in what you do?
Really good question. So I think this is such an exciting time to be building a residential property management company because of all of the innovation that's happening. One, all the trends, in my opinion, are going the right way. More and more Americans, and non-Americans, by the way, are waking up to the idea that they want to own rental properties in the U.S., right? That's just an undisputed thing that's happening. Two, more and more of those people want to do it less full time. They've got other things going on. Three, we are enjoying all kinds of crazy products and financial plays that mitigate risk and guarantee rent. And, there's pet insurance. We're able to transfer the fees that the owner of the property used to have to pay to have that property managed. Now, a lot of those fees are actually transferred over to tenants, as you guys know. So the divide, the gulf between the people that are doing it well and the way that the average Joe would expect it to be done is huge. And so all of our opportunity is in the sales and marketing. It's one, the business owner should be out there building and developing the best product possible and keeping up with all this innovation. And two, it doesn't matter how great your product is. It's a myth in business that the person with the best product wins. If that story is not being told in a way that's landing and understandable to a prospect, not in your own language, with your own inside baseball and the way you know how to do it in the curse of knowledge, which we all, experience, but in a way that is basically blowing the prospect's mind, building trust, saying what they're thinking better than they can say it, and just truly showing them that you have so much value that they would actually pay double what you're charging, then you're leaving a ton of money on the table today. And I'm watching that all over the country. It is so, I was never in property management. It's been about 18 months to 2 years since my business partner, Jordan Muela, found me, who's the founder of Lead Simple, or co-founder. And he said, I love what you're doing, Jeremy, because I was doing this for all kinds of service-based small businesses. And he said, you got to see what's happening in this property management industry. And we started Rentscale. We built our own team. And that's like, I just got like this front row seat to watch what you guys are doing. And I think it's fantastic.
So, okay. So let's say we're sold. We know Jeremy has to stop doing the sales, which is true with Star Group, and his Doug partner. We have to, his partner, Doug, and we have to get a BDM. What is the first step?
Great question. So when we are doing things ourselves as the owner, it's easy to be a little bit lazy, and I'm not accusing you guys of doing that. I'm simply talking from experience. Jordan jokes about this all the time. When the business owner is doing all the sales, they're like, oh, CRM reporting isn't very important. But as soon as they hire someone else to do the sales,
right,
all they want to do is talk about the CRM reporting, right?
Right, yeah.
But that's just one microcosm of all the things in our business. And that's why the strength of the leader is often the weakness of the company, right? So one is just getting it down on paper, right? This is just E-Myth 101, it's just get this stuff down on paper. What's the process? What if every sale looked almost identical? And believe me, that is possible. I think that we tell ourselves a story that every customer is different, every sale is different. But when your sales process can be every bit as operationalized as your accounting process, your rent collection process, your eviction process, whatever it is, that's when you've got power. So one is basically getting it down on paper. We call that the blueprint for scaling your sales, because every company is a little different. What does that sales process look like? Do you have a sales playbook? Do you have an answer to all the right objections? Do you know exactly what your customer cares about, how to demonstrate value? This isn't as hard as it sounds, but this can be like, 5 or 6 pages of sales language. And then do you have the tools to measure this, right? Does your CRM, whatever you're using, actually enforce this process the same way you guys use, maybe a process street or another process, right? Any of your other businesses, if you're asking a team member to follow a process, you have tools to make sure that they follow that process, right? And so that's step number one. Even if you're doing it, I did that with Rentscale. I did all the sales. I wrote it down. I had the CRM, and I was the beta test before I built our sales team.
Great point. That's something that I actually pride myself on. If I'm going to implement something, I do test it first. I make sure that whatever the actions are that I'm asking of somebody, that data or whatever it is shows up on somebody else's next step list, their list of things to do, so that it can progress from one to the other without, having to manage from 30,000 feet and see where things are, research how to find out where the sales process is. If I could, just 1 second, when you go into another company to consult and bring your services, do you let them know of other like services, other fees that they can charge, other things that you've seen in clients similar to theirs, or do you just stick to the process and how to onboard or how to discover potential clients and then onboard them?
That's a really good question, Jeremy. And that's maybe kind of the fun about being so industry specific and seeing the same business model over and over again. We don't necessarily sell that as what we do, right? So there's no over expectation that we're going to come in and revolutionize your business model. In fact, we want to be hired by people who love their business model and they want to just bottle that lightning and scale it, right? So they know it's working. How do we crank up the level? However, when you see, we've written playbooks for, I'm guessing, I'm just going to throw out a number, close to 120 property managers. We've been to all these conferences, both the speakers and vendors, and you're just kind of bathing in this stuff. And so when you see it, you like can't help but bring it up, and it's just so funny how somebody might bring us in and they're a 9 out of 10 on like everything we're seeing. We're like, whoa, these guys are amazing. And then they have a blind spot that like our tiny clients don't have. You know what I mean? They're just like, oh, well, you can't do this because of X. And we're like, no, actually we have like 5 clients that don't do that, So that's just kind of something that's it's reassuring for me as a business owner, right? No matter how big we get, no matter how long we do this, we still have our blind spots, right? And sometimes we're so busy slaying the dragons that we forget to close the front door when we leave,
Yes,
Well,
that's so true.
And maybe tell me if I'm wrong. One of the things in our industry that I picked up on a few years ago, at least seemingly, is that companies were trying to derive new ways of finding revenue to grow. And so kind of the trend in our industry became what I refer to as fee effing. It rhymes with trucking. And so they just layer on all these different charges for all these things that really didn't add any value. And I think it did to some extent bring in extra revenue. But it almost seemed like that was a replacement for having to have a sales team. Have you at all? That's always been a theory of mine. I'm just curious.
That's an interesting topic. I'm a big fan of what I call financial innovation. You might call it fee trucking. You can't be a consultant, Jeremy, unless you have a really good word for like what other people like to, say derogatory things about. By the way, another one of those we always joke about when we're training BDMs and they're talking to an owner and they want to say, do you have enough money to carry their property? We teach them to say, we're looking for clients that have the financial stamina to carry the property, right? So
I like
sometimes
that.
You just come up with the right term, you become this big fancy consultant. But yes, financial innovation is a fantastic way to discuss this idea of transferring the fees, from the owner to the client or to somebody else. And like everything, it's diminishing returns, right? It's all about your core principles. I'm a big believer that you can be in business for reasons other than making money and still make a boatload of money, right? I don't think that they're incongruent. I know that we have major principles here, but we never shy away from what profits can do for your team, for your community, for your impact, for your ability to give back, right? The lifeblood. Go ahead.
Well, yeah. So, and I know that we're pushing up against a break, but that's a really important point because I do think that profit, like the larger the profit, the better you can feed quality in your corporation. There are too many people that try to walk too fine of a line of margins. And if you do that, you literally cannot be the best. You can take plumbing outfits. They charge $150 an hour, but what they have in common, those really expensive ones, is that they have a great customer service department. They have good reviews, and it is because they charge more than everybody else.
Right.
So this is such
a place where the person managing this huge investment is struggling to stay alive, right? I will literally say that in a sales call. Do you really want your property manager to be struggling to stay alive?
Absolutely.
That's a sobering thought.
Oh my gosh, that's so true. And that happens a lot in our industry. So Jeremy, I want to get into hiring a BDM because let's say I figured out the playbook. I have my process for sales written down. I'm fully committed to this, but there's going to be an outlay of cash, maybe, while I'm training this person, and there's a little fear it's not going to work out and I'm going to lose money in this venture. So what steps do you tell property managers to do to make sure it's a good hire?
Start off with don't be an idiot. Right? Start off with that. So
exactly. Yeah. Don't be an idiot. Have a product worth selling, right? Like if you don't believe in the product, you can't pay someone else to believe in it, right? No one's ever going to believe in it as much as you, which is just riffing on what Jeremy was saying. And you'd be shocked at how much I actually have to tell people that, like, I'm really terrible at sales. This company's never really taken off, but if I get a salesperson, everything's going to work out, right? It's like,
I can totally see that though. I can totally see that.
It's not the solution, it's the amplifier, right? So this will scale what you're already doing really well. So let's just get that out of the way. Now, sometimes business owners are actually building a fantastic business and they are actually their worst salesperson because that's just not their personality and they don't have they're not good at it. And so I'm not saying that you have to be crushing it as the owner before you hire someone, but the company has to be worth selling. So having said that, I don't want to mislead anybody. I've yet to find a business where there is no risk, there's no investment. When you hire a BDM, everyone says, I only want to hire a BDM if they start paying for themselves right away. Listen, guys, anything in business is an investment. However, I will say this, having put out my little caveat, when you hire salespeople, it is the one role that grows the pie rather than carving up the existing pie. So if you do this effectively, this person will grow the pie and you will be kicking yourself for not doing it earlier, right? If they're taking away the existing pie, you have done it wrong. And that's the easiest way to look at it.
And it's pretty easy to measure. I mean, there are some jobs in operations or customer service where maybe, you have to put a lot of effort into call monitoring and listening to calls, and it's very tedious to see if people are working out. Sales is pretty obvious, right?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And again, with that one caveat that you're not going to hire on Tuesday and they're going to be paying for themselves by Thursday, they're going to take a little coaching and they're going to, need some motivation. Sales is a different animal. Let's just be honest. They're going to be different than your operation people. But measurement of this is pretty clear. We know that it's working, right? At the end of the day, they're either growing the pie, they're either making you money or they're costing you money. And it's the easiest role to look at it that way.
How much time do you give them? Would you recommend a BDM be given to start to perform?
That's a great question. So we have this conversation all the time, and the answer depends, but it's an easy formula, and that is, what does your business look like today, right? How much lead flow do you have? Are you the kind of person that one of our favorite clients in Orlando, they are spending over $10,000 a month on marketing. They've got radio, they've got billboards, their SEO is insane. That BDM is just answering the phone and they're being measured on conversion ratio, right? We got other clients that have an amazing reputation. They're not investing, they haven't made that same kind of a marketing investment. They want their BDMs to go join BNI, to do outbound direct mail, to, we can easily find lists of property owners in the area. They're relationship builders, right? You can imagine that those two people are going to be judged differently. And give you 10 other shades of gray in between those two. So what does your company look like today? What are your expectations? And then once we have that, we build a 90-day onboarding plan. And this is, by the way, guys, what I'm about to say, we do for salespeople. Myself as a business owner who struggled with good people for the first decade of that, this is the trick that I think is the best advice I could give. So we have a 90-day onboarding plan. We distill their job down to a single sheet of paper. We call it the scorecard. We know what their metrics are. We create a 90-day plan. So we have, here's where you're at 90 days, and this is if I know you're successful. Here's where I believe you need to be at 60 days. Here's why I need you to be at 30. And then we go week 3, week 2, week 1. The day that somebody starts in our company or for our clients, we actually put calendar invites on their calendar. 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, 60 days, 90 days. And their objectives are on the calendar invite. So there is I
love that.
No hiding. Like, this is where you need to be by week 2. And then we have a meeting, right? And so what's amazing is you would be shocked at how many people just quit because they look at that calendar invite and they're like, I'm nowhere near here. And they just show themselves out the door. But it keeps us honest as owners. And I'm not saying that you have to be super hard about it and they're like 80% of the way there and you're like, all right, what coaching do you need? But let's just be honest. Most of us business owners, we hire someone and then we say, solve that problem. I'm over here, and we forget about it.
Well, and I think for a different personality, that model that you just mentioned of, a week, 2, 3, 4 weeks, 30 days, or 60 days, 90 days, might make you a little bit nervous. But I will say, of the salespeople that I know, that's what drives them. Like that's the personality fit, and that's how you know that you've got the right person in the first place.
You're right.
I would just say, don't be afraid of it.
And that's part of the hiring process. Is I say, hey, this is what we're asking you to do. These are the tools we're giving you. This is the training. This is the comp model. Can you do this? Sell me on that you can actually hit these metrics. So it's not like other hires where you're like, hey, I hope I can get you to where you need to be. It's like you've signed off on this, right? And so there's no like guilt about you either hitting it or you're not hitting it.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. And then also, if you need to have a tough conversation, I know a lot of property managers struggle with those. And so it's accountability on the property owners or the property management company to hold people accountable as well. And so if it's not working out, it's like, you know what to do. You committed to this beforehand. And so you can cut the cord if it's not going to happen.
We need accountability as owners to hold our people accountable.
Absolutely.
That's what nobody
don't like rules.
About, right?
We hate rules. So we break all the rules that we make and make our people crazy.
Yep.
I mean,
it's uncomfortable. This might be a question where I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I'm curious because there might be various reasons that a BDM can't succeed. So maybe the numbers are just too far-fetched. Maybe they're too ambitious. But also, are there instances where a boutique residential property management company has essentially already saturated the market? Is there a point where they can't bring on more business? So we're a market of 800,000 people in this area. Is 1,200 units the max that one might consider possible? Or, and if so, does that mean that the company needs to prepare to go to new markets? What have you run into anything like that, or do you have any history?
Several thoughts. I'm really glad you asked this question, Jeremy. I think that this is where I've reflected on this a lot. One, as a business owner, let's just be honest. I think that all of us are playing too small, right? Like that's the default is like, I only know what I know and I've only seen what I've seen. And so it's really hard for us sometimes to think the first 500 units were hard. So therefore the second 500 have to be hard, right? Like we do fall into that trap. So I just want to say that I think that in general, most of us are thinking too small. Number two, myself included, by the way, this is a self-guiding conversation for sure. Number two, I think that, we're not really in competition with other property managers. We're in competition to sell the dream and create more landowners that we can service. So that's another thing I would say. We've got some strategies for that. We've observed other people who are doing amazing at that. But number three,
and I won't interrupt number three for very long, but that would be kind of your already existing portfolio. You see that there's a property manager that's making a 15% return, or a property owner that's making a 15% return. Approach them and say, "Hey, would you like another one?" Is that kind of what you mean?
It could be that. It could definitely be you're doing it yourself, and I can get you better results, or I can get you more. I have another property. It can also be, are you tired of doing this? You know how many people like self-manage and then get tired of that, and it's time to move on. Where does that go? It's also.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I was
It's also creating the first-time landlord, right? Creating that there's some radio commercials I've seen my clients run in some amazing areas where it's like thinking about selling, you could actually be a landlord, and they convince people to do that.
Okay.
Yeah. Or if you have a friend who got a promotion and you're like, "Hey, have you thought about your future? You want to get into property management?" And a lot of them could use that, given that the stock market is generally speaking so high. Maybe you could buy some piece of garbage and fix it up and make some money on it as a rental. So there are lots of ways you can go.
In any business, anyone listening to this in any business, I totally believe this, and I've seen this myself. The better margins are in creating market versus taking market. Like demand fulfillment is like, who's the lowest price? Who's going to answer my questions? I've got all the power. But when I am truly the trusted advisor and I nurture that, there's much better margins in that. All right, number three. Let me go on to the third one.
Right.
Yes, please.
Okay, these are all good. Number three, growth means different things to different people. We've had some really successful clients, and we've like drawn this on like a graphic. I wish I had like a whiteboard behind me. It's a pie chart, and it's like, here's your 800 properties. Out of your 800 properties, how many of these people do you hate? And I hate to use that word so strongly. And they're like, oh, geez, probably like 90 of them. I'm like, all your medium should do is replace those 90 with better. And then when that new 90 shows up, you're going to hate another 10, and you're just going to keep doing it. And it's upgrading versus just growth. So that's the blind spot that a lot of us have. It's not just about expanding. Sometimes it's about upgrading.
So yeah, because our industry, at least for years, and a lot of my friends, they pride themselves in unit count, which is important. And it's actually so important to our peers that I even catch myself trying to make sure that I say that, we're 1,200 units. Yeah, we were 1,200 units last year, and we were 1,200 units before that. And I have to explain to them that we've been replacing C properties with
upgrading
A or B properties. Yeah, and it because that's the unit. Everyone cares about the unit count.
Totally.
Well,
need
now
to
we
not
should.
worry so
I think
much.
we should go for that next level.
Now we can. Yeah, we've already kind of cranked out the A and B.
And I don't know how your model works, but I even have clients that have like 3 levels of pricing, and they're happy to just have their BDMs work on everybody that's at the lowest level and just upgrading the current client. So there's when
that's interesting.
Yes, think about it, Jeremy, because I know you do sales and you got other stuff to do. When you have nothing to do but sell, you start selling in a whole different way than when it's just like, oh, I can sell. I always know how to convert. I can answer every phone call and I can convince them to buy. But you don't have the time to do all this crazy stuff we're talking about.
Right.
So when you have clients and they're looking at a bunch of resumes, what are some of the characteristics you think make for the best salespeople?
Ooh, okay. We have like 3 hours left, right?
Right. We have 3 hours and
Just kidding. No, it's a great question. Let me give you maybe the most radio bite size, thinking on this that I can give you, because there's a lot here, right? So Jeremy and I know you, Gwen, like we are rainmakers. We are a type of salesperson who can go out and we can squeeze blood out of a stone. We can do crazy things. And with that comes some undesirable traits that I will admit. It's hard to keep consistent, right? I make all kinds of crazy deals, maybe I want to work really hard when I have a goal, and sometimes I don't. And I hate to be accountable. So we think there's like 4 types of salespeople. And for a small business who wants to scale, there's a very specific type of salesperson I want you guys to be looking for.
Oh, wow.
We call that person a top performer. It's not me. It's not you. Right. Well, I always joke with my clients. I'm like, you can't afford me. I'm probably not going to listen to your rules, and we're going to end up hating each other like 90 days from now. Right. But that's what most of us do as business owners, is we try to find somebody just like us.
Yeah.
But a top performer is basically like, I draw little lines and I'm like, okay, there's 2 dimensions you need to think about. A top performer is amazingly high on leadership ability. Like when you have a conversation with them, they don't talk all over you, but they don't just answer questions. You can tell they're controlling the conversation, right? They're asking good questions, they're responding, they're leading the conversation. And all of us do this on the call. But what we don't have is the other dimension, and that's your propensity and appetite to follow a system. So we want leaders who have an appetite for systems. If you can find that is the kind of person that you can scale your company on. That's what we want to be bringing into our company.
Oh, I totally agree. You want somebody who will follow the rules, because I think the worst part about entrepreneurs is we don't follow rules and we're not detail oriented. So we suck at the processes and procedures that we wrote ourselves.
We don't follow our rules.
Maybe not all of us.
Yeah. But we also get especially mad when you go back to look at the CRM and it's not the way that I get pissed.
I know. And I do too, but I'm my
Do you use anything like the culture index or one page or anything like that to help?
I think they're all great. They're all great. And there's not just one type of personality profile. I understand that there are some disqualifying or undesirable personality fits for sales. I will say that. But it's not like they've got to be this. Like if they're within this spot or this, like we have amazing people who are relationship builders. We have amazing people who are just laser directors, right? So we use something called workplace DNA. But meanwhile, like the same concepts that we look at workplace DNA, I can map the DISC and I can map the culture index. It's the same thing, right? So we just kind of want to know who they are and how outgoing they are. Are they willing to be conflict open? Are they leaders? Do they drive, right? Are they pioneering, which means they don't need somebody to give them a 9-point checklist to show up to work and follow all day long, right? They're self-starters. They're comfortable with inconsistency. They're comfortable with figuring things out. They're resourceful. Meanwhile, they're not so over the edge, like I said, like we are, where they're just totally, not going to follow your rules. So we do use a lot of them and they're good. I don't think I'm not here to tell you there's like one you got to follow, but these are the things that we have conversations about. And what we use them for, Jeremy, is we in the last interview, or not the last interview, but far into the interviewing process, we tell them what their DNA says about them. We ask them if they agree that it's true. And then we show them, this is why we think you'll be good at the job, and this is where we think you'll struggle. And we ask them to sell us on how they're going to overcome that.
Ooh, I love that.
We're hiring
That's
a
great.
developer.
Yeah.
And I think we need to maybe bring that up to him. You have a question, I guess.
So, Jeremy, we are so happy that you've been here with us. Can you tell everybody where they can find you?
Absolutely. You can find us at rentscale.com. We're also really active on Facebook. We put out all kinds of webinars and make crazy videos and share different thoughts as we have them. Feel free to email me. I'm Jeremy, Jeremy, at rentscale.com. The lesser Jeremy on the call. As we
Stop it. Oh my God.
Those are the good spots. Yeah, but you can always reach out. Just follow what we're doing. Even if you're not ready for this, we just love sharing these things that we figure out and these prototypes and these case studies. So happy to help anybody along the way.
Well, we will put that contact information down below
in the show notes.
I will also in the show notes, and I will also have the guy that's running Wistar Group give you a call to consider us bringing on a BDM.
That's absolutely true, because we have learned so much, so many takeaways. We just got finished interviewing the lovely Jeremy Pound.
I don't understand what you mean by attractive. I don't get it.
He might look like a Disney prince. I don't know. Anyway, so he works with RentScale and gave us a ton of takeaways. Oh my gosh. Mine was that I should have meeting invites, which you already know I love, for milestones for new hires. I think that's an amazing idea.
Well, and if you haven't heard, if you're jumping into the interview a little bit late on the radio or wherever, go back and listen in slow motion, and take some notes, because there were a whole bunch of gems that you can take from that. If you're a company that's looking to move forward to the next step, especially smaller companies, middle-sized companies, there's some takeaways there that you'd be best taking away.
Well, one of the things that really I want to focus on is that growth mindset. I think a lot of times we're so worried about loss, financial loss, not making payroll, or we came from that world. Like maybe our business has gone beyond that, but emotionally we haven't grown. And it seems like some of the things Jeremy Pound was talking about kind of shake you up and make you think, hey, maybe there are more possibilities than I've been thinking about.
Well, and to ease the fear a little bit, if you do have those weekly, first week, second week, third week, first month, 60-day, 90-day goals already defined, there are some stopgaps, some pressure valves that during the process of onboarding that you can release. If it's not working, you're going to pick up on it early, and that'll protect your cash flow. Just have the KPIs and you'll be in at least okay shape, and you're going to have to take some risk to his point if you're going to get anywhere.
Thank you once again to Jeremy Pound for being with us here on Bootstrappers. That's it for this episode.
This has been Bootstrappers, a unique presentation designed to help you better understand how the world turns. Contact Gwen or Jeremy at hosts@bootstrappers.club or visit our website, anaquim.net. Be sure to subscribe to our podcasts on Apple, Google Play, Spotify, and our YouTube channel. Thank you, and join us next time for Bootstrappers.